Hey, I'm Jeff. I'm one of the engineers at Belt Bicycles, and I'm here today talking a little bit about the new suspension platform we have called Equilink technology. Just want to go through a little bit about how the bike works, a little bit about the setup of the bike, and some of the things you'll benefit from riding this bike. To start off with, basically what we've done is looked at a lot of suspension bikes out there in the market and really tried to think outside the box, try to come up with a new way of tackling the same problem. There's so many different versions on the market right now that are using the chain to actually try to counteract weight transfer on the bike, or bob, and how you do that and how it applies is what everyone's working on right now. So instead of just coming up with a new solution to using the chain to counteract this weight transfer, we came up with something different. So instead of using the chain, we came up with the idea of using Equilink. If you look at the bicycle down here, you notice this red link right here. Basically what this is doing is the same job that a lot of bikes are doing with the chain. Every time you pedal a bicycle, normally on, let's say, a high pivot point type bicycle, if you think back in the older days when you had real high pivot point bikes, your swing arm angle was real high and your chain was down here like this. Every time you pedaled, it tried to pull the suspension closed. In doing so, what you did is you basically made anti-squat for the bike and kept it efficient in pedaling. The problem with that, though, is you had a lot of pedal kickback and a lot of negative features as far as the bike locking out when you're climbing and just doing a lot of bad negative things. So it was positive in the fact that it made the bike more responsive, but it was negative in the fact that you had these other bad attributes on the bike. Throughout the years, people have come up with really clever, interesting ways of using the chain force to do the same thing. Some of them really efficient, some really good, but some of the problems are that they work really well in one gear combination, but maybe not as well in other gear combinations. Some other problems have been in the past of having particular setup issues. You have to have a certain amount of droop travel set up just right, or the bike might have not felt as good. Or special valving in the shock to kind of compensate for the fact that the bike maybe had a little bit of a bobbing problem when you accelerated. So by limiting using the chain to counteract weight transfer, we're able to get rid of a lot of these problems, but have all the same benefits of using anti-squat on the bike. If you take a look at the design, what you'll see is every time you pedal the bicycle, you're basically trying to pull the rear wheel towards the bottom bracket. When you're doing so, though, you have this lower link. So every time you pedal the bicycle, this lower link wants to rotate clockwise, like so. At the same time, though, when you're pedaling the bicycle, it's also wanting to squat and bob, which means the top link's trying to rotate counterclockwise, like this. So every time you pedal the bicycle, the lower link rotates down, the upper link rotates up, but because it's tied together with the Equilink, you achieve a balance between these two links. So this one goes, they pull against each other under tension, and the suspension system balances itself out. So what happens is every time you have the bike and you're pedaling it, this system basically becomes neutral. So these pedaling forces that typically cause a bike to bob or squat are now eliminated. So what happens with that is that we can now use the chain to do what it's meant to do, which is drive the bicycle. Again, since we're not using the chain to counteract weight transfer, we don't have to worry about having a rearward axle path. The problem with the rearward axle path, like I mentioned before, is you get some pedal kickback. On this bike, it has a near vertical wheel path, which means that as you're pedaling the bike climbing, you're not getting any pedal kickback associated with the axle path that's going backwards. Also, the suspension system's not locking out when you're climbing. So when you're going over some real technical rocky section, you're not getting a bike that's got that notchy kickback feel. You're not getting a bike that's locking out and causing you to lose traction on that last bit of rocky section you're climbing. So what happens is the chain does what it's meant to do, which is drive the bicycle forward. The rear wheel moves in a vertical axle path, so you don't have any pedal kickback. Another benefit of that is that because the chain isn't doing all that anti-squat work, the bike has a real consistent feel in any gear combination. So if you're in a small chain ring, middle chain ring, or large chain ring, the bike has a real consistent feel to it. You don't get a bike that has too much anti-squat in the small rings and too little in the bigger rings. You get a bike that's consistent and smooth feeling throughout its travel. Going back to that again, you have a bike that's set up very easily. On this bike particularly, you set up the shock pressure to basically the rider's weight times 0.8. And that sets you at about 15 millimeters of sag, which is a good starting point. But it's not required on this design. If you're a person that likes a little bit of a firmer ride, go ahead and put more air in the shock and have a firmer ride. If you want a bike that's a little bit softer set up, go ahead and put less air in the shock and you get a little bit softer feel. If the bike isn't dependent on a certain suspension position, the travel feels good, the pedaling feels good, no matter where you are in the range. Again, because of this, we're not dependent on any sort of special custom platform type shocks. This is basically a stock Fox RP23 shock. What's nice about it is it gives you the option of turning pro pedal off or turning pro pedal on. Like I said, this bike was designed not to use pro pedal, so we recommend turning it off. That way you get a bike that's real supple, it's real responsive, it soaks up all the small bumps just as good as the large bumps. Certain customers might prefer that feel of the platform shock, therefore they can go ahead and click that on and have that option if necessary. So basically, to sum up the whole system, quite simple. Every time you pedal, the lower link wants to rotate down, the upper link wants to rotate up. The Equilink equalizes the upper and lower links and equalizes negative pedaling suspension movements. The rear wheel goes up and down and does what it's supposed to do, absorb bumps. The drivetrain does what it's supposed to do, accelerates the bike forward. You get an efficient, all-day type mountain bike that's great for climbing, great for downhill, great for single track, an all-around, all-purpose bike. In the future, what's nice too is the Equilink system is almost a standalone system. It's independent of the front triangle, independent of the rear triangle, which means we can apply that to other technology in the future. So if we want to do a long travel bike that's just as efficient as a pedaler, we can do that. If we want to do a real short travel bike that's just extremely responsive and extremely lightweight, we can do that as well. So the future is pretty good for Equilink, and new models in the future should be coming soon. That's about it. Thanks a lot.